Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on The Conversation. Now, the Free State Education Department has launched an investigation into 649 school employees with criminal records. Now, these employees, including teachers and support staff, have been convicted of various offenses such as murder, rape, assault, and drug trafficking. The investigation aims to ensure a safe learning environment and determine the appropriate course of action for each individual. Now, the department stresses the importance of regular criminal checks, as some educators with criminal records have previously slipped through the cracks. Now, according to reports, 3.6% of teachers in South Africa have criminal records. 26% of educators with criminal records have more than one conviction. 15% of educators with criminal records have been convicted of sexual offenses. 20% of educators with criminal records have been convicted of violent crimes, and 80% of educators with criminal records were convicted of crimes committed outside of school hours. Now, joining me on the show to discuss this further, we have Zama Ntshona, his ATM national spokesperson from East London. Hello, Zama. Thank you for joining us at this time.
Good evening to you and the listeners. Viewers, rather.
All right. All right. So, Zama, let's begin, with the basics. Just briefly, what led to the investigation of school employees with criminal records, in the Free State?
Thank you so much. Well, for us as the African Transformation Movement, this investigation is a very necessary investigation. As you would know, the future of any country lies in the way it actually nurtures the next generation. And the schooling system is a pivotal platform where we are able to actually give the ideals of our society to the next generation through the schooling system. So who is mending this area is very important. Who are these individuals who are teaching our children? Who are these individuals who are empowering our children? What are the shortcomings of these individuals? These are important questions that need to be answered, because unfortunately, we find ourselves in South Africa with a challenge of drug use amongst young people, substance abuse among young people, and we do not know in the main how these drugs end up in schools. For instance, if you look at this report, the report will tell you that there is a 3.95% of those teachers were within the system who were convicted previously for drug trafficking. Now, how do we know that they are not still in their old ways? So in our ambition and as a country to try and see to it that we build a future that is almost flawless for those who are coming on after this generation, we need to ensure that we create a conducive environment for a culture of learning and teaching, having entrusted those who are the teachers and educators in the space a role, knowing fully well who they are. So basically, it is in the interest of protecting the next generation that this study is necessary.
As it should be. But there seem to be more questions, so many questions to be asked. A lot of people are asking why in-depth background checks were not conducted in first place. How have these employees been working in the schools? So many questions to be asked. And how did they pass the initial vetting process in the first place?
That's true. Good questions and necessary questions. It's unfortunate that when you look at the first 30 years of the democratic dispensation of the Republic of South Africa, we have unfortunately found ourselves in a predicament where you find the ruling party that has been dropping the ball. It is no talk in the grapevine that truly the ruling party has actually dropped the ball when it comes to making sure that controls systems are working and there is consequence management for anything. So that has actually contributed to the weak systems that we find ourselves in. Also, the relationship between the ruling party and the workers' union, COSATU, where we know that a teachers' union, which is SATU, is affiliated to, and they are part of the alliance, we wouldn't put it past, though I do not want to say this as a definitive comment, but I wouldn't put this past that relationship, that the fence was lowered intentionally to allow comrades to actually find space in this particular space or avenue, even though they had these kinds of criminal records that should have been actually taken care of at the entry level. So I put it squarely on the inadequacies and the intentional lowering of the bar by the ruling party so as to make space in certain cases for their colleagues. But in general, it is the degeneration of governance in South Africa that has actually created this particular problem.
All right, Zama. Now, will the department, that's the Education Department, be conducting regular criminal checks on existing employees?
As the African Transformation Movement, we are of the view that it is necessary. It is necessary because we are finding acts that are very strange happening in our schools. Even the line between a teacher and or the relations between teachers and students have eroded to a point where they are not healthy anymore. And we do not know what could be some of the underlying factors. And we can't take away that these relations that are not of the subject matter could have a contributing factor to the matter. Let's say, for instance, it is found out that teachers are having relations that are not okay. Maybe let's just say teachers are sleeping with students. As soon as that becomes a norm, or teachers are drinking with students, or teachers are actually using students to actually do issues of drug trafficking, the issue of a parent or a parent-teacher relationship would actually be devalued to a point that now these children would see their counterparts or friends in their teachers instead of seeing their parents. So it is very important that the lines are drawn and they are clear at all times so that we are able to deal with any other challenges. Of course, this is not only an isolated matter because society as well has its own challenges, but we can't run away from the fact that it is of necessity to actually know who is entering the system. Of course, as I'm saying this, we must also look at the issue of South Africa as a corrections program for offenders. Offenders also have rights. There are inadequacies of the system, and we should not, in an isolated manner, think that everyone who has offended we must just use a blanket approach. We must have systems in place that ascertain the safety of our children by the people that we bring in.
So will this scope of investigation, address the backlog of criminal checks for educators, even those that have actually educated in the past, or is it going to be just for those who are recently or who are presently in in some of these schools?
I think for us as the African Transformation Movement, a system overhaul, so to speak, would be necessary. For us as the African Transformation Movement, getting to know who are these individuals who we have entrusted with our children, it is necessary. It is important for us to actually determine are there individuals who wrongfully acquired their jobs, and there must be consequences for those. As you would know, recently, in a matter that is not related with this, but in trying to exhibit that the systems in South Africa are a problem, we had a system of a learner who entered a schooling system using a fraudulent ID, actually having taken an identity of another and came in the schooling system. That's how much flawed the systems of South Africa are when it comes to these matters, only to be discovered 23 years later that 23 years ago, there's a child who was actually deprived an opportunity to participate because of such systems. So if it happens on matters of identity, and in this particular study, we hear of people who entered without disclosing, it actually speaks to the rot that we find within the system. This is why it becomes imperative that the department must actually look at the teachers that it has in its system, and it must actually determine if these individuals are fit for purpose. If you lied about your criminal record, what else are you lying about? This is why it becomes imperative that we must know who are these teachers who are within our systems.
Zama, you did talk about, these individuals having rights as well. Now, will these employees or individuals be given the opportunity to respond to the allegations, before disciplinary action is taken?
Almost definitely. The South African democracy, if there is one thing we fought for greatly, was the right for an individual to be represented, the right for an individual to be heard, a right for an individual to actually be assumed innocent till proven guilty. We know that record keeping may be a bit of a problem also in some instances. So that would need verification in some instances. Also, people must be awarded an opportunity to say, no, I am not the individual. I was never in this kind of a compromising situation. So it becomes important that the individuals who are fingered in this particular study, they must be given equal rights, human rights, so that they are able to actually respond for themselves. Because we do not want people who were not people who participated in crime finding themselves without jobs because of unfairness in the labor system.
All right, Zama, now some of these teachers actually work with children, young girls, a vulnerable population. Now, what measures should or will be put in place to tighten the noose or even prevent employees with criminal records from working with such vulnerable populations?
Thank you so much. As the African Transformation Movement, number one is the issue that we've actually dealt with, which is the issue of thorough background checks that must be done. But also, we must have clear policies and guidelines that are going to assist us so that we're able to deal with the violations of the Constitution or the crimes committed against society, and also be able to determine the degrees. For instance, with individuals here who have let me say for the record, all violations of the law are wrong. But can we say an individual who has a traffic violation, can we prohibit that individual from teaching in a classroom? These are questions. This is why now we must bring the issue of differentiation, which crimes should be prohibited altogether, and which crimes, when an individual has gone through a rehabilitation process, must actually be admitted. So that is on clear policies and guidelines, but also we must support rehabilitation. Those who are within the system, there must be, maybe this is that just now as an idea, a program, a support mechanism that assists the reintegration of offenders or people who were formerly offenders back into the system. Also, the issue of transparency and communication is going to be key, because we can't, if we are not transparent and communicating about these matters, be able to fight against this. And it's going to be important. Any applicant that wants to enter the system, that applicant must be transparent about their past. The issue of monitoring and evaluation is going to be key, because we can't just have these policies which we're not going to be monitoring and we're not going to be evaluating from time to time their effectiveness. Also, the issue of engagement with legal authorities, because this is a sensitive matter. You can't just do as you please because you feel like your child cannot be presided over by an individual.
Zama, you just talked about, authorities, and the investigation is being conducted with in collaboration with the South African Police Service, if I'm right, and also the National Register for Sex Offenders as well. Now, talk about briefly about the South African Police Service. What role do they play in the investigation and prosecution of these individuals?
Thank you so much. The justice system is the custodian of now, this is where the police system, this is where cases are reported, the justice system, this is where the individuals would actually be convicted. So these play an integral role in providing, one, the necessary information. When we want to conduct background checks, these are the institutions we ought to go to, and these institutions will assist us greatly so that we are able to deal with the issues of verification on those who are actually alleged to be offenders. But also, they can play a critical role in issues of training and awareness. They can play a critical role on issues of training and awareness. Now, these become very important in that sometimes you find that individuals are not really aware of what their rights are and what their limitations are. Now, these institutions, when partnering with our schools, because not all the time you're going to find an SGB that is made up of learned individuals. It depends on where you are and the sample that you have, the individuals, how much they know about the laws of this country. So if we are in partnership with these legal authorities, they can actually assist us in the empowerment of the various platforms, especially schools, so that when we make decisions, we can make decisions that are informed and that are based on law. So we believe that they can actually assist us in doing the training and awareness programs that would allow us so that we are able to have support mechanisms and initiatives that would assist the schooling system to be able to deal with the challenges.
All right, Zama, just quickly before we go, let's talk about the major systemic issues within the department or even schools. You did talk about, you know, some of these schools who have actually been found to be at fault. But what about some of these principals, you know, who failed to conduct the criminal checks and ended up employing these individuals? What happens to them?
Thank you so much. Matters of negligence must be dealt with. We do not believe that we must only have a system that is a system that awards excellence but does not have, it must be a carrot and a stick. In the event that people are not able to do what they ought to do, there must be consequences. But those individuals must actually be taken through a process. It must not be an issue of somebody waking up one day and saying you are guilty or not, but it must be an issue of a process. They must be subjected to a process, and that process will then give us the necessary results, which will tell us and inform us if those individuals are guilty. If they are guilty, it must tell us, as according to policies of this country, when you have not done what you're supposed to do, what is a recommended sentence or punishment for what you have done.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time and speaking extensively on this, Zama Ntshona, ATM, that's Africa Transformation Movement National Spokesperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much.